So we've kind of learned these concepts of a price offer curve and a demand curve. So let's apply these concepts to these different preferences that we've seen before. So the first kind of preference that we'll apply this to is perfect substitutes. Perfect sub, and we're going to assume that it's a one-for-one substitution. So if you think back, that's like our black pen and blue pen example, where we don't care about color, so we're going to substitute one black pen for one blue pen, for instance. So we're going to kind of assume a one-to-one substitution. But you could have 2-for-1 and things like that, and that would slightly alter our analysis here. So we've learned that the demand for, let's say, good 1 is going to be equal to 0 if the price of good 1 is greater than the price of good 2. Right? If we're willing to perfectly substitute one black pen for one blue pen, and we go into the store and blue pens are more expensive than black pens, then we're just going to buy black pens, right? So we wouldn't buy any blue pens if blue pens is our first good here. If the prices are equal, we're going to have a demand between 0 and spending all of our money on this first good. So we've kind of seen that before as well. And then finally, we'd spend all of our money on good 1 if the price of good 1 was less expensive than the price of good 2, if we're willing to substitute them 1-for-1. All right, so let's draw our price offer curve and our demand curve. So x2 and x1, and then p1 and x1 here. All right, so let's start with our price offer curve, and we're going to draw indifference curves here. Let's try to get something that will show up a little bit differently. So here's our indifference curves. Remember, they have the slope of -1. Because we're willing to perfectly substitute them. We can draw a third one if we wanted. They should all have the slope of -1. And so if the price of good 1 is more than good 2, then they're not going to have any of them, right? But then if the price is equal, what's going to happen is that we're going to consume anywhere along, for instance, this line, or if the price is less than, anywhere along there. So this is what our price offer curve looks like. As we change the prices, if price of good 1 is higher than the price of good 2, we're not going to have any of good 1. As soon as they're equal, we're going to be consuming somewhere along one of these indifference curves. So for instance, this indifference curve. And then as soon as the price is less than the price of good 2, price of good 1, we're going to consume all along, we're going to spend all of our money on x1 and buy 0 x2. So it's going to follow this line and go across there. And so if we want to draw our demand curve for this, any price above P2, we're going to have 0 quantity demanded of good 1. This is P1 equals P2. As soon as it equals P2, we could consume anything between 0 and m over P1. So this would be that point m over P1, and that's going to be equal to, we're holding P2 constant as we're looking at this analysis, so this is like star, I guess. Like, I'm just saying, holding that P2 is a particular amount, we're just changing the price. And then what's going to happen for the demand, it's going to start to go down like this. Right, because we're consuming only good 1, but if we keep raising the price of good 1, we can afford less and less of it. So that's why it's coming down like this. So this is what the price offer curve and the demand curve look like for perfect substitutes. So for our second example of price offer curves and demand curves, let's look at perfect complements. And again, we're gonna look at that kind of simplest version with, you know, the left shoe, right shoe, where we wanna consume the same amount. Consume the same amount of each good. So the utility function here, u of x1, x2 is just the min function of x1 and x2. And it's just a one for one complements in terms of, you can see there's the constant in front of each of the x's is just one, right? And we know what the demand for this looks like, which is that x1 equals your income over p1 plus p2. Right, essentially we're treating both these goods combined as a single good that we want to purchase. So again, now we're going to keep changing the prices and see how much of the good this person wants, right? And that's the demand curve, and then we're going to map that out with x2 and x1 to see the price offer curve. Or we're going to do the opposite in terms of which one we're doing first. But so x2, amount of good 2, amount of good 1. And over here is that demand curve. So the price of 1 and the quantity demanded of good 1. All right, so you know what our difference curves look like here are those right angles, right? And for us, with this 1-to-1 complements, and again, it's really hard for me to draw these well on this kind of whiteboard, but it should be like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. I mean, they could be any, it could be 0.5, 0.5, et cetera, but they're these right angles that pass through this x, or y equals x line, or x2 equals x1 line. And so what we're doing here is where, I guess I'll use blue, let's imagine the prices such that this is our budget constraint. Well, we have this much would be the amount of good 1 and good 2 we want. And if we change the price a certain amount, or we can change it a smaller amount, but there's going to be another indifference curves that just is touching that corner. And finally, we can think of another one, and maybe it goes out like that, and I should keep my axis going. But essentially, what the price offer curve is this line through all these points. And it should be like this straight line, right? This nice straight line through these points. So this is the price offer curve. So we're changing the price of good 1 here, or making it cheaper and cheaper, and we're seeing how much it changes how much x1 we want. And if we want to track that, all it's doing is going along kind of this line here, this x1 equals x2 line here. So when we think about our demand curve, it's going to look something like this. It's going to stop right there at m over p2. So all we're doing is we're lowering, so up here, the price is high enough, we don't want any of this good. You know, if we can't afford any of it, we're not going to have any of good 1. But as the price kind of starts going down, our demand, or quantity demanded for x1 is going to go up as this starts to go down. The denominator is getting smaller, so everything's getting larger. And so the demand for good 1, the quantity demand is going to go up, and it's going to keep on going up until the price equals 0, and that's what this intercept is here. So this is the demand curve for these perfect complements to look like.